It's time for What's the Truth. I'm Zach Martin with my good friend Yih-Chau. And before we start our topics for this afternoon and get to the truth about the story behind the story, I was researching some Talking Heads music because this coming week I'm going to be talking to a member of the Talking Heads, one of my favorite groups, Yih-Chau, when I was in college at St. John's University, many moons ago, as the expression goes. And as I was trying to find some videos that I thought would fit into the show and were the right quality, I came along this one and I thought to myself, there's so many people with way too much time on their hands. And you're going to laugh because it's a great spoof of the Talking Heads.
Living in a shotgun shack, and you may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you know, you may say to yourself, well, how did I get here? You may ask yourself, what is that beautiful house? You may ask yourself, where does that highway go to? You may ask yourself, am I right? Am I wrong? And you may say to yourself, my God, what have I done? Same as it ever was. 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 Same as it ever was.
That is Trump versus Talking Heads. I just think it's great. You know, that is talent to be able to come up with an idea like that. And obviously, there's so many people under quarantine and lockdown. This is what they come up with. Over here, and we're going to get to this story later on about what's going on in Patterson as far as this mail-in election goes. It occurred to me, and I don't know if I brought this up last week, but maybe in the state of New Jersey, they want to do mail-in voting because maybe they didn't be embarrassed about the actual outcome. It's interesting to note that Cory Booker is running for re-election. I had no idea. I think that maybe Governor Murphy wants to hold on to as many seats on the Democratic side as possible. But maybe the bigger story is if the voting is fair and square and we don't have this mail-in voting and everybody goes to the polls, Trump might take the state of New Jersey. And let me tell you why I think this. I was down the shore yesterday in Monmouth County, Sandy Hook, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. I saw one boat after another with Trump banners. And everywhere I went, I saw more and more Trump flags and Trump banners and Trump signs in these houses. Where I live, which is about 60 miles north of there, 10 miles west of New York, there's a lot of, I guess, people seem to be supporting Biden, or at least in the press. That's the idea you get. But I think that this is going to be a landslide win for Donald Trump in November. I really do not see Biden and Harris winning and taking this election. Now, I could be way off with my assessment, but this is just my opinion. I could just be way off on why we're doing the mail-in voting. Again, just my opinion. But you know, I just find it funny. I find it odd how this was done. I don't know if there's a constitutional issue about this, what the courts will do, what Donald Trump's side will pursue legally, but it's just a fascinating thing to observe. And I've never seen in my life that many people with, just on a regular Saturday with their banners flying and Trump 2020. I never saw that in any other previous election. And New Jersey, I think twice in the past 30 years has went to the Republican side. So it could be that that's actually what's happening. I might be wrong. This is just my opinion, just some observations I made. Yih-Chau, what are some of the observations you're making? I guess the distortion between what we see in the mainstream media and what might be actually taking place.
Yeah, so I would ask our listeners why it just seems like none of the conservatives or Trump supporters are really worried about these poll results being double-digit percentages in favor of Biden. I mean, literally nobody's worried. That's kind of strange if you've got data, empirical, supposedly quote unquote empirical data that's supposed to be demonstrating to you that the candidate that the media likes is ahead by quite a significant margin. And to be perfectly honest, I think everybody realizes that the polls are completely inaccurate. And when you do, of course, this is anecdotal evidence, right? But a lot of people that I speak to, and kind of who you speak to, find the same results. They have a lot of secret Trump voters that won't come out and say they're voting for Trump, but they certainly are. But even more and more now, you're seeing a lot more public Trump support, right? So you're talking about the the boats over where you kind of live, and you've kind of seen where they have a very public display. We've got a guy who's over in Boston, going around the city and Trump painting Trump 2020 in the streets. We got the Proud Boys over in Portland showing up and pushing back against Antifa and BLM. Over here in California, we've got pro-police, counter protesters to Black Lives Matter and Antifa showing up and doing all kinds of protests as well in support of the conservative side, right? So this is happening all over the country. You've got people who are sick and tired of things like 87 days worth of straight riots and protests now, and people are getting sick of it, and they're really starting to kind of rise up, kind of find that American brand of piss and vinegar, and coming out and saying, hey, enough is enough. And if I got a person come out here and do something about it because the cops won't do anything, because they've been hamstrung by Democratic leadership in their cities, then we got to do what we got to do. Let's stand up and defend the American way, defend our country, our culture, our values.
See, I don't really have a problem with anybody picking either side. Everybody's got their reasons. I'm not offended by someone saying, oh, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I really dislike Donald Trump. I think it's the wrong direction. But and this is what I see on Facebook, and this is what really drives me off of that platform, when I see someone, a friend of mine, going off about how they're going to vote for Biden and Harris, this is the right ticket. And anybody who doesn't think like I do or vote like me, well, you're the problem. You're an idiot, all the labels. And I'm thinking to myself, this is bullying. This is a form of, so you're the smartest person on the planet, right? Nobody can think differently. And if anybody thinks differently than you, there's something wrong with you. And I have no problem with people with their Biden stickers and getting behind their candidate. I think that's the American way. But I just don't even know to this point in time what the actual issues are. What are we trying to figure out? What direction we're going? What's the platform? The DNC just took place, and it seemed to me, I didn't watch it because I don't want to waste my time with that stuff. It's just it is really a waste. It seems so high school, and the blurbs that I get, it's pointing toward Donald Trump as being lazy, in over his head, a blooper reel in foreign affairs, all of these negative things. We're not talking about issues. We're actually talking about another human being and saying very hateful things. Not that Donald Trump doesn't fire back and say awful things about his opponent, but I can't get into either side doing this kind of stuff. We're like far from the issues. The issue should be, how do we recover from COVID-19? Joe Biden says he's going to lead us out of COVID-19. I think that we're, like, good or bad or indifferent, we're being let out of COVID-19 right now. There's nothing that we really can do except play the waiting game, find out what the information about this virus is, and formulate some sort of game plan. Then there were the various bailouts, one of which was $2 trillion earlier in the year, and we had the Paycheck Protection Program. So it seemed to me that we were being led somewhere. So to say that there's no leadership in COVID-19, when in fact it seems, from my observation, that every governor is in charge of his own state, which is what it should be, to determine what is necessary for that population and coming up with some sort of plan. Other than these personal attacks, other than making a distinction between Trump and Biden, I really got nothing. I have no idea where some of these guys stand as far as what the issues that they want to bring to the floor.
Right. And, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if you take a look at, how you were saying you didn't, watch the DNC, right? But even the Democrats who, did watch the DNC, they came out in droves talking about how, it was an utter and complete disaster. When you've got your own base, basically stating that, they think they're going to lose because it just seems like, the Democrat Party is phoning it in. I mean, what's the Democrat Party's platform, Zach?
That's what I'd like to know. I have no idea.
I really don't. Because they don't have a platform. Their platform is, I hate Trump.
Yeah, anything but Trump. That's what I've always heard. Yeah. I mean, that's not, to me, I talked to a few friends and they go, if you're going to make it a popularity contest and that's what it's all about, you're going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, they have no platform. Their platform is, I hate Trump, right? And I mean, through all of the things that they've done to try to, trip Trump up and do whatever they can to get him out of office. I mean, their biggest accomplishment over these last few years is trying to impeach Trump and having impeached him in the House. They didn't even bring that up in the DNC, right? So if this is their biggest victory, they got they basically have nothing. They have several nights of feel good rhetoric that basically said nothing. There's no policy proposals that they're putting on the table. I mean, even their slogan, even Joe Biden's slogan, "Build Back Better," is a cheap knockoff of "Make America Great Again," right?
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's the Democrat Party really just phoning it in, and they're really not fooling anybody, not even their own base. So if you can't even get your own base excited about your platform, what does that tell you about what the general public is going to feel about what you're all about? And not only that, but in comparison to viewership in 2016, the viewership was actually down 25%. It was down 27% the first night, 25% the next night. Basically, it was down by a quarter for the entire Democratic National Convention. I mean, what does that tell you? It tells you that their voter base is not even excited enough to watch their convention. If they're not even excited enough to do that, what makes you think they're going to, turn out in droves to vote for Biden?
Well, I don't even think they'll even take the time to mail it in. I think most people are disinterested, and when you get it in the mail, you just figured, oh, this is the thing that they send every time there's an election approaching that tells us what to expect in the polls. I think that what we seem to make a mistake, or what media they seem to make a mistake, that people are paying attention to them, and they're not. It's an even smaller amount of people that even realize that there's this mail-in voting, right? They're just going to go through life going, oh, this is interesting, and they're not going to mail it in. Here's the other thing that I think that we make these assumptions, and maybe on the Democratic side, they assume that Pelosi's going to be elected. She assumes she's going to, win re-election. We don't know that. I mean, anything can happen. People might really be fed up with her. Maybe they just would say anybody but Pelosi, anybody but Schumer. I don't even know if he's up for re-election this time. Anybody but McConnell. I mean, there's, the Republicans aren't off the hook either. I mean, there's some of these Republicans are really doing a bad job, right? They just seem to remain silent while everything is happening around them. I think a lot of people are afraid to do anything because if it blows up on them in their face, so to speak, they don't want to take responsibility. And that's there is a laziness with politicians where even with the ACA, there was a bloc that supported what we call Obamacare. And Pelosi at one point, we don't really know what's in it. We're going to have to vote on it first to find out what's in it, which made no sense. It was monstrous, right? It was like bigger than the Bible. I did read most of it. And the preamble, like I said in the past, was really good. I mean, yeah, of course, these are all the things that we want. Good health care, affordable health care, cover pre-existing conditions. No sense in anybody going bankrupt when they, are sick. I mean, we should find a way to make sure that everybody gets adequate medical assistance or coverage, whatever verbiage you want to use. I think what happened was, all right, I'll write it. Are you going to back it if I write it? Sure. You're going to look what's in it? Yeah, all right. Yeah, sure. And it gets pushed forward. Nobody really reads it, and they vote it in. I mean, that's human nature. How many times have you said, you want to read this contract? Oh, yeah, all right. Or how about the user agreement with Apple? Does anybody actually read that word for word, see what are the terms and conditions? So I think there's a little bit of laziness. These guys get used to living a great life. I mean, while the rest of us are struggling to figure it out, they got the premium Cadillac healthcare. They've got great benefits being a member of Congress, and salary's not bad either for a starting congressman. $175,000 plus probably your expenses. And really, if they tried to make $175,000 in what I call the real business world, good luck. They'd be lucky if they make 40, because they're not very good at what they do. I mean, obviously, they're not even good at what they do, in Congress. So these are some things I just often think about. And again, even with the mail-in voting, I think people are. I've noticed that they backed off on this. Not much talk about it, right? All of a sudden, I'm not hearing so much about it anymore. And then the Epstein case. What happened with that? How come this is not a problem? How come this isn't a major issue that we have sex trafficking going on? There was a bill signed a couple weeks ago where there were funds given to help the victims of sex trafficking. I think Ivanka Trump was behind that with her dad, President Trump. So what are we doing about that? That's a horrible thing. How's that helping women? What's going on with Epstein? How come if it was attached to Trump, they'd be all over it? I mean, this guy his goose would be cooked. And some people have made that attempt to do that. And I will say this, if it turns out that the president of the United States, no matter who he is, even if it's Donald Trump, was involved in any of that stuff, they should all go to prison for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, right? I mean, there have been so many revelations in regards to, Epstein, and yeah, I can tell you that overall it's gotten to the point where there's so much obfuscation and the different intricate issues that have become so kind of convoluted that it's hard to get the straight story on it, right? So recently you had one of the sex trafficking victims actually come out and came out on video that she was giving Bill Clinton a massage upon his request, because I guess his neck felt stiff or whatnot. She explicitly stated that, hey, he was nothing but a perfect gentleman during the entire time that he was with her. But the damning piece of evidence there was the fact that her testimony is actually confirmation that he was there on the Lolita Express and, flying out to, the Epstein's Island to do whatever they were doing out there. Right. So,
and despite all of that, they bring Bill Clinton into the DNC to lecture us about the character of the current president.
Yeah. I mean, the tone deafness is just, I mean, it's epic, right? People, they just seem like they're completely out of touch with reality. As if the average American has no idea what's actually going on in the world. You've got even Stephen Colbert, I believe, called out the absolute hypocrisy of Bill Clinton coming out here and talking about, behavior in the White House, and he himself obviously, conducted himself in the most egregious manner possible, right? So, when you've got your own, base calling you out, it's just another example of, just how out of touch with reality that, the Democrat Party really is. I mean, in my mind, the reason they're behaving in this way is they're probably feeling like whatever plan they have that they're trying to attack this election in November with, it must be so, how should I say this, so deviously foolproof that they're either going to be assured a win, or they're going to be able to contest a Trump victory almost indefinitely. Obviously, I don't know what plan they have, kind of in their back pocket, but to just come out and make public statements and promote figures on their side that they really should be hiding, while completely shunning others that could actually help them achieve victory, is just stunning to me, right?
Maybe they'll get Prince Andrew as to help out in the campaign as well, or the former royals that are living in Hollywood. Well, here's a possibility. If we don't have a declared winner by January 20th, I know according to the Constitution, the incumbent president will not be permitted to serve even on an interim basis. And I don't know if it's the president pro tem of the Senate who serves. I don't think it's the Speaker of the House. I know succession is the Speaker of the House after the Vice President, but not in that circumstance. I haven't read the Constitution in a long time regarding that, but I do remember a long time ago reading words to that effect. Al, from the other point of view, if the President pro temp is chosen, now this is assuming that the Democrats could somehow gain control of the Senate, but if they're able to certify winners in a senatorial race, then they certainly can certify winners in the presidential race, right? Well, otherwise, if it's going to mean remain status quo in the Senate because you haven't had to declare a winner, then there would be a Republican probably as an interim president anyway.
Well, the thing is, it could run into a situation where you're able to certify the rest of the election, but the presidential race is kind of like up for grabs, right? So kind of
I would vehemently argue and call BS on that. If you can somehow, not calling BS on you, if you can tell me that you can declare a winner in the senatorial race using the same ballots that you have for the presidential, what a bunch of horse crap that you can't certify a presidential winner. See, I would just like sit there with my hands folded and like, you obviously are out of your flipping mind. There is something exactly, you must be that evil and that mentally disturbed to actually sit there and think that I'm going to believe that kind of stuff. And I will say this, anybody who buys that one, man, I got some swampland in Florida to sell you. I got a great investment for you. You'll believe anything.
Isn't that what happened with Gore and Bush Jr.? I mean, that's essentially what happened there. They had
but see, there was a determination made by the time Al Gore cast the votes in the Electoral College. So we were talking about, I see what you're saying, but it would be statistically impossible. Let's just say 50 states had the same problem because of the mail-in voting. And all 50 states, they were able to choose a senator, but none of the 50 states were able to actually find a president. I would find that hard to believe, statistically impossible. You know what else is statistically impossible? That any candidate in any given election would get 100% of the precincts. That happened when President Obama was reelected in 2012 in Philadelphia precincts. You can look it up. 100% voted for Obama. Bull. Okay, please, if you're going to cheat, just, learn how to cheat better. I mean, it was almost so brazen that we're like, we're going to show you what we can do, right? 100%. You know that there's always that one person that gets confused in there. It's just statistics, basic math, man. There's always a plus or minus a standard deviation in any of these things. So how stupid are people when it comes to math?
Well, I mean, even the dictators in some of these communist countries or socialist countries, they don't even give you like 100%. It's they'll have like a good 6 or 7% that they'll just kind of throw in there for good measure, just so it doesn't look
Exactly. Otherwise, you look like yeah, exactly. That's what you do. You've sort of like, well, not everybody voted for me, and that's okay. We're free over here. I got 89% of the vote. Really.
yeah, exactly.
Well, if you want to move on, we can get to some of the other issues that we're going to discuss on What's the Truth.
Sure, absolutely. Before we move on, just a moment to talk to our audience real quick. If you like the content that you're seeing here, please, comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell here on YouTube. Really help us out. Help us to grow the channel, grow the podcast, get us to, where we need to go to, really reach a wider audience and share critical information that you're not going to be able to kind of get in the media. So we'd really appreciate if you were to subscribe, like, comment, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff here on YouTube.
Yeah, you can do that. Also, subscribe to the podcast, which is What's the Truth with a question mark on it. And it's got a picture of Yih-Chau, because I thought, like, he really looks cool in this picture. So we're using that. That's the graphic we're going with. Also, if you want to be a guest, you can always send me an email, or as I say, Zmail, Zach, Z-A-C-H, at newhdUSA.com. I'll guess one of these episodes, I'll put it up for everybody to see. We definitely have the website. Oh, while I'm thinking of it, I could do that, put up our website. There you go. And you'll find the contact information there. We also cover music and lifestyle. We have some recipes for people to find on newhdUSA.com. So it's more than just politics. This is the only political type of show that I will ever do with Yih-Chau, because, well, I like Yih and Chow, or however he wants to say it. And he actually knows what he's talking about. I'm maybe me, not so much, but I both Yih-Chau and myself, this is what we try to do. I'm not really as biased as one might think. I'm just middle of the road, common sense. Did you know that majority of people in New Jersey are independent? We say that we're independent. We don't subscribe to any party. However, in reality, if you want to vote in the primaries, you have to pick a side. So, you do what you want. But most of us, including myself, will say we're independent, because, as the great Mayor Ed Koch once told me, anybody who believes with me 100% of the time is nuts. Also, don't think I gloat over the current condition of the Democratic Party. I thought that when it was a strong party that had some principles and tried to be, I guess, have some integrity, and I knew where they were coming from. I always thought, like Tip O'Neill, right, as an example, there was some way to work with this guy. It wasn't so radical. And I don't even know what the hell a democratic socialist is. What does that mean? You vote for your dictator? I mean, I don't know what that meaning of that is. And liberal, okay, the root libertas means freedom. So a free thinker is liberal. I really don't. If you say, well, what's a conservative? I don't know. To me, here's the bottom line, Yih-Chau. It's got to make sense. It's got to do best for the most people. And there are certain immutable areas that I will not, it's a boundary, okay? I can't support any pro-life candidate in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, can't do it. It's my belief system. You will not convince me otherwise. There's no way to make me change. It's immutable. It's part of who I am, and it's a hard line, and I will not deviate ever. And you might think I'm an ass clown for saying that, but that's my personal belief. If you're pro-choice and that's how you view things, fine. I'm not going to tell you to, be something you're not. I can respect that, sort of, but it's who you are, and I'm not going to sit there and debate the issue. You do whatever you want with your vote. I'm just telling you right now, there's no way I'm ever going to vote for a pro-choice candidate. Not going to happen. So there you have it. It doesn't mean that if a Democrat ends up winning the White House, I'm going to spend 4 years on Facebook calling him or her a POS and making myself miserable and coming up with all kinds of names and hoping that they get impeached and rooting against the person and being disrespectful to the person who holds the office. I would never do that. I didn't do that to President Obama. He's not my cup of tea. Seems like a nice enough guy, and sometimes he made me laugh. But there are some issues that I can't move on. Can anybody ever respect that about an individual? At least I'm honest. I tell you where I'm immutable.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? I mean, America was founded on this principle of being able to, talk about issues and really be accepting of one another's positions and really have an intellectually honest way of kind of communicating different sides of an issue that the other side may not have considered, right? And then instead of going through a process where the fittest survive or the strongest wins, it's whoever can reason and argue their point the most effectively and maybe compromise a little bit to kind of incorporate a larger set of perspectives on a particular issue. That's really what America's founded upon, right? I mean, you take a look at our founding fathers, and there are plenty of things that they disagreed on, right? There's even the issue of slavery. They knew that there's no way they were going to be able to form this new republic if they declared all slaves to be free at that moment. So they were forced to compromise on that, and basically they had to kick that can down the road, so to speak. And eventually we addressed that issue, right? But this is what we kind of kind of do as a civilized society. Is we argue with each other, we understand each other's positions, we try to make compromises whenever we can, and we move forward together based on a more comprehensive solution that everybody has at least had a chance to kind of give some input in, right? So that's clearly not that kind of thing's not going on these days. And what you're talking about, liberals, most people think that the Democrat Party is the party full of liberals, or Democrats think of themselves as liberals. What liberals are is a term where you're liberally accepting different viewpoints. And that's really not what applies to the modern Democrat Party. The modern Democrat Party is my way or the highway. There is no middle ground here. There is no talking. There is, I've got the moral high ground here. My position is the position. Should you disagree and have the gall to disagree, publicly, then, we will do everything we can to.
Oh, yeah. We'll cancel you out. Oh, and there were the comments made by Harris where she says, we're going to root out every single Trump supporter and we're going to, squash them, or whatever the words she used. I'm thinking to myself, well, who the hell are you? By the way, did she not, when she was the attorney general, sit on evidence, exculpatory evidence that kept people on death row? Did she not have a good time smoking her marijuana while she put people in prison? I mean, you don't have a problem with that? Seriously, that kind of hypocrisy, I definitely do. At least Bill Clinton says, I tried it, but I did not inhale, which I remember him saying. I'm thinking, well, what kind of dummy are you? If you're going to try it, might as well inhale, go all the way. BS, you inhaled it. You went all the way with it. I mean, a lot of people experimented with that. It doesn't make you a bad person. It means that you made a bad choice. How about that? And you know what? If you have a terminal illness and if that's how you're going to treat it, that's your business. And I have no problem with that. You should be allowed to smoke whatever it is you want. We got to stop regulating a lot of the behaviors, right? Even Jimmy Carter, back to the pro-choice and, pro-life issue. He says the Democratic Party's got to stop getting into that so much. You got to steer away from it. Look, the courts have already decided. Now, here's my perspective. I don't think my taxpayer money should be funding that kind of stuff. All right. You know what? That's your responsibility. Honestly, figure it out. And then on the father's side, does the father have a choice? So, we've got a lot of things to think about. Billy Graham, in this argument, he goes, we're not going to be able to figure this out in the courts. We're going to have to figure it out by our faith, right? And if people have faith and they have a belief system, then I don't need to legislate any of that sort of thing. That's basically it. And here's something else I was just thinking of. Whether you believe or not, what does the Bible say? Go to the book of Proverbs and just read that. It's 5,000 years old, I guess. I don't know the exact date of it, but man, people or the writer of that was really wise, and that ancient wisdom is a good thing that can be applicable today. We were talking about the art of war last week and the Asian philosophy. That Asian philosophy and wisdom is applicable today. So maybe we have to like go back in the past and rediscover those and have another renaissance, because what I'm seeing right now is far from a renaissance, and the stuff that's happening in the streets is not going to definitely persuade anybody seeing it your way, which will bring us up to this issue. Everyday Americans are now rising up against Antifa and BLM all over the country, even in California. And believe it or not, one market I'm in, Beverly Hills and Fresno. What's going on? What's the truth with that, Yih-Chau?
Basically, we had, if you take a look at the Fresno Bee, they'll tell you that we had 500 protesters show up in, Fresno to support the police, right? So support the thin blue line, and actually it was probably closer to actually several thousand, but hey, at least the news media covered the event and recognized it as a counter protest, obviously, to what's going on with Black Lives Matter and Antifa throughout the country, as far as like the rioting and the looting goes, right? So that also happened over in Beverly Hills, and you'd think, hey, over in Beverly Hills they've got to be the most left of all the lefties probably live in Beverly Hills, and that's probably why they went out there to make a point. Basically, they want everybody to know, hey, we've had enough. Let's start standing up. Let's start pushing back, because if we don't, we're going to allow those who do not believe in our culture and our values to really hijack the country, and we'll end up in this place where nobody wants to be. Historical precedent.
Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, so to speak. And I think there's a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety going on in our country right now, specifically because of COVID-19 and people trying to navigate through all of this and wearing a mask and not wearing a mask and social distancing. And it's also showing up in various unhealthy ways. And I just want to take a little bit of time, Yih-Chau, talking about suicide prevention, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I want to put up this number. I've been seeing a lot of data that suicides are up, especially with teenagers and preteens. Why is that? I think the bullying that takes place online is really unhealthy, and more people are doing more and more things on the internet, and we see a distortion of reality, what our life is supposed to be like based on some picture that we see, or the relationship didn't work out, whatever it might be. There's a lot of misery. And so I just wanted to let people know that there are people that you can talk to. I would say, please talk to your priest, your pastor, your rabbi, your religious leader, friends, relatives, maybe a crazy uncle who's willing to listen, or an aunt you have, or grandma, grandpa, anybody. Pick up the phone, call 800-273-8255. That's a suicide prevention hotline, 800-273-8255. Get the help you need. There's no stigma. There's nothing wrong with having these emotions and these feelings. What's wrong is when you don't say anything to anybody and you think that suicide is the way out, and it's not a way out. It is just not a remedy. And people who might want to judge those who have committed suicide, they're not any different than you or I, okay? These are people that were going through some really horrible times, one bad thing after another, maybe it all piles up, and they make a bad decision. That's the difference. So please don't make that bad decision. Get the help you need. 800-273-8255, Suicide Prevention Hotline. Again, 800-273-8255. We're going to leave the number up here during What's the Truth for the rest of the show. So you have that information. Write it down and make sure that everybody has it. Put it on the refrigerator. And if your kids ask about it, say, well, I don't know how you're feeling. I don't know what's going on. We haven't talked in a while. Start that conversation. Say also, too, maybe you have some friends that could really use this number. Everybody, go on Facebook, go on LinkedIn, go if you're not banned, and share the information. It's really important to do that. Talk to your kids. This is not easy for them. The anxiety is on so many different levels, with the job, with school. We're going to talk about going back to school, with the COVID-19, the social distancing, the isolation, not being able to see your friends and relatives, what you're hearing in the news, and the fighting amongst these so-called grown-ups in politics is off the charts. And teachers, your job is to teach, not educate, and not indoctrinate your students, which leads us to this next story we're going to get to on What's the Truth. As kids go back to school, parents are catching teachers spreading the left's radical propaganda and their racial propaganda as well. I want to comment on that, Yih-Chau?
Yeah, you know, let me see if I can actually share the article on screen here and, you know, maybe kind of show our audience. Let me see here.
I really don't know how to do that.
Let me see.
So as Yih-Chau is trying to figure out how to bring up the article, well, you can always give us the website address if it's attached to that. Again, the number for suicide prevention hotline is 800-273-8255. And look at this. He is actually able to do it. Man.
Yeah.
All right. So
if you
let's
take a
try
look,
to figure this. Now the next question is, how do I make it work? All right, go ahead. Take it, Yih-Chau.
So, you know, over in Tennessee, we had, you know, a set of parents. Obviously, you had, you know, kids going back to school, I think last week and this week. And, you know, actually throughout many parts of the country, you know, school districts are asking their teachers, you know, specifically, or asking the parents specifically not to, you know, sit in on their, you know, their kids' lessons that they're seeing, that they're taking online. And
oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
that's nice.
absolutely. This should be a huge red flag to every parent, you know, who's sending their kids back to school, right? You know, why are you afraid of me paying attention to what my kid is learning and what you're teaching them? Is there something insidious that you're trying to spread with them at this point, right? And apparently they have good cause to be concerned, because, you know, they're obviously, you know, using this far left agenda to basically, you know, teach this racial hatred mentality, or racial victimizing of, you know, basically white people mistreating either black people or brown people, you know, as in
wait, how about Asian people? How many Asian people are getting it because of COVID-19 being the Chinese virus? Think about that for a second, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I see Yih-Chau coming down the block. Man, I better get on the other side. It's a Chinese virus. Oh, it's those people's fault over there. Right? I mean, tell me that you have never been the victim of racism, please. It's like, you know, you're an easier target in many ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And you know, if I don't generally get bothered, you know, myself personally, but there's certainly, you know, hundreds of stories where, you know, people are coming into, you know, like Chinatown and beating up, you know, old people and whatnot, just because, you know, they feel like, you know, they feel justified in expressing some of their racial resentment based off of, you know, what's going on with, you know, the coronavirus, right? So, you know, that stuff definitely happens. I can tell you that it's not white people coming into our communities and doing that, but there's certainly no shortage of, you know, racial hatred, right? So if you take a look at the screen here, you know, you got, you know, Grant B911, who's, you know, basically giving you screenshots telling you, hey, you know, the white kids told the Mexican girl to go back to Mexican school, right? Or the Mexican kids were sent away and forced to sit in the dirt with flies around them, an electric fence that shocked them because white people are bad. You know, this is not a civil rights lesson. This is self-hate and fake white privilege. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that they're teaching you, your kids, when you're not paying attention. And now that they're forced to teach your kids, you know, online because of social distancing rules due to COVID, now you're seeing for yourself just how, you know, egregious and ridiculous, you know,
I would just really be happy if the teachers could teach children literature, English, proper grammar, how to add things up, math, critical thinking skills, a little bit of history, maybe. How about some science? That'd be great. You know, how are we going to solve global warming if kids don't understand photosynthesis? CO2 to O2. Uh-oh, I opened another Pandora's box. Yeah, there's no place in the classroom for this. And I've even seen on the internet that some of these whack jobs are trying to push pedophilia as being a choice. Sorry, no, it's not. You go to jail for a long. Actually, you should be executed for that stuff. But that's just me. Wow, I'm not surprised. We should not indoctrinate children. Politics should not be in the classroom. It really should not, especially in grade school, maybe even up to 12th grade. You want to talk politics when the kids are paying for those classes? Well, that's the chance you want to take, because you can get a bad review by the students. But I really don't think that politics belongs in the classroom. None of this. Civics is something different. I mean, how about if we're going to always talk about constitutionality of A, B, and C, or what happens if we don't have a declared winner by January 20th, and the process? Those are good things to know. What is in the Constitution? What are our Bill of Rights? What does freedom of speech mean? I remember getting into that discussion. Can you yell fire in a crowded movie theater? Are you protected by your freedom? You can't. So there are limits to all of the rights that we have, right? You cannot assume that you have the right to do whatever you want any old time. It's just not how any of it works. And on an individual basis, how about teaching the kids manners? I mean, like, okay, we don't talk out of turn. You raise your hand if you have a question. Hey, don't bully, don't laugh at your classmates when they ask what you think is a silly question. Don't make fun of somebody because they're a different color, or because they're fat, or because they're Asian, or because they're, I mean, I usually get make fun of because my legs are so white, right? Like, what do you want? What do you want from me? I can't help that. Stop making fun of people for things they can't help. Right. And here's the other thing. Be friends, be real friends with special needs kids. Don't do it so you look good. So it's great on your application so you can get into a good school, because it makes you feel good. If you're going to be friends with somebody with special needs, the blind kid, the deaf girl, whomever, do it because you really care and you like them, and be a true friend, which means that you do normal things that friends do. Go to the movies together. You go out to eat. You pal around, you go swimming together, you got each other's back, you go fishing, you have discussions, you play games, or maybe you have some friend that's severely disabled, can't do much. You just spend time with your friend and, read to them, or, try to make them laugh and make them feel better. This is what love's all about. Maybe if people understand the true meaning of love and love thy neighbor, we'd have less problems all around us. But, back to the school, I've seen this argument before, politics out of the classroom. Now, if you go to politics and religion out of the classroom, however, if you go to a private school that just happens to be a parochial school, a Catholic school, they do have a right for religious education to be taught, and that you have to live up to a code of ethics. In other words, that, St. John's University is a Catholic university. You accept the Catholic doctrine and all that goes with it. You just don't cherry pick it. And that's the choice you make going to that institution. That's why, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, this one kid, he got in trouble at Fordham, which is a Catholic university run by the Jesuits. And they're questioning whether they want to let him back in because they disagreed with his political stance. I suppose because it's a private institution. I suppose because they have their code of ethics, and maybe he, violated that code, good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe if they treat everybody equally. In other words, if I have more, let's say, the opposite view of this other kid, but I got in just as much trouble and I am limited in what I can do, then fair is fair. But when we start to cherry pick, like what we're going to accept and what we're not going to accept in that kind of a venue, then there's a problem. That's called the conflict. That's an integrity issue. So just my 2 cents. Yeah, when it comes to education, I can't reiterate that's enough. Stay out of the politics, teachers. Don't do it. And the kids, all right, your contract with the teachers union and your benefits and all of those things, it's not the kid's problem. It's your problem. Figure it out after work, right? You have a different responsibility, and you get 3 months off in the summertime. So I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with all of the indoctrination that's kind of going on in our schools, to see it, spelled out in black and white, as explicit as it is, no wonder, you've got these, kids out there who are, protesting and, smashing up, buildings and windows and looting and rioting. I mean, no wonder. I mean, this stuff is just, absolutely, first of all, it's untrue, right? So this information is just, false information to begin with. And, as far as our history goes, there is no, subtlety or going through like the finer points of, how certain parts of history were definitely ugly, but they were kind of ameliorated or made up for by other parts of history where we try to do the right thing to make up for our shortcomings, right? I mean, the Civil War is a perfect example. You got hundreds of years of slavery that went through, and who was it that really freed the slaves, right? It was other white people. It was white people from the North. It was people who laid down their lives to free the slaves, and they paid for that debt, generations of debt, with their blood and their lives. So that debt is paid in full. It was paid for, by white people in large part. And at this point, we shouldn't really be at this point where we're trying to recast the debt on a generation, more than a century later, almost 2 centuries later, and try to have some kind of, I guess, reparations paid.
How about this? How about some people that are here in the United States, whether they be white or otherwise, they came over in the early 1900s or the 1950s or the 1960s. They're second and third generation. What do they have to do with it? And by the way, many people fled Europe. They were a part of the peasant class, serfdom. And they were treated like slaves. How it would work. The king would say, I want such and such from you. And if you don't give it to me, well, you're going to go to some sort of debtor's prison or things like, or worse. Right. So they didn't really have freedom. Whatever the king said, that's how it went. Even with their faith and what they believed, whatever the king believed, you had to believe it. So people fled for that freedom. They came over here and they risked their lives to do. I was just reading about my great grandma, who came from Russia around 1898, I think. That's the one side. The other side has been here since the 1600s, since the Mayflower. Zachary Taylor, his grandfather was John Tyler, and well, anyway, his grandfather was also the grandfather of James Madison. So all of those families, all, are related. Okay, so that's part of my heritage. None of those horrible things that happened to other human beings hundreds of years ago, I had nothing to do with that. It's not my fault, and certainly not my kid's fault. And guess what? I'm not paying for it. I'll tell you that right now. I will not subscribe to that crap. You got to be S-ing me, right? I mean, what is this? These stories like we're gonna, and look, there's nothing wrong with the Black Lives Matter, movement, if it's done peacefully and respectfully and want to engage in dialogue and we go over maybe our history. But when people take it upon themselves to destroy property that's not theirs and to, put people out of business and to attack the Ronald McDonald's house in Illinois and Chicago and stomp through it and go to stores and just take what you want and think that, all right, this makes up for it. Man, dude, this is not healthy. This is not solving any problems. What you're doing is you're actually hijacking the movement yourself. It's a self-inflicted wound. And then, we talked about in the Civil War how white people died to free slaves, which is true. There were black people that died to free slaves, which is also true. And there are white people involved in the BLM movement today, which is true. And so I'm not going to say whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. If that's what you believe and we want to fight for what you feel are civil rights, okay, great. But let's be honest about it. I don't think a racist country would have elected an African-American president almost 12 years ago if we were that racist, right?
Absolutely.
I never grew up with look, we all say horrible things as kids. We tease one another and we say, German, Irish, Russian. Guess what I was called? A McCraut and, all of those things, right? A commie. Well, I'm sure that you've had some good ones, thrown in your direction with your friends. But what would happen if it went too far? You'd beat the crap out of each other, and why do you have a bloody nose, Jimmy? Well, I called him a Mick Stupid, and he kicked my ass. Well, don't call him Mick Stupid anymore. You live and you learn. But it would never rose to a point where I hated anyone because they were different than me. That's just a bunch of hogwash. And people that do that, you really have a mental problem. You really do. If you really truly believe that you're superior to anybody, then man, you're gonna. Oh man, I wouldn't want to be on Judgment Day. That's all I could say. I just wouldn't want to be in your shoes. Don't think consequences won't be the result of your action, and your kids are watching you. Larry King a long time ago said something that has stuck with me for almost 30 plus years. He got on his radio show one night and he goes, "Racism is stupid." That's all he said. Yeah, you're right. It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Racism is stupid. Bottom line, stupid. That's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I mean, imagine if all the Asians here in this country were demanding, our Chinese people, like, we helped to build the railroads out here, and obviously we weren't treated very well.
No, not you and the Irish guys, right? You and us Irish guys. We were like the butt of everybody's joke. Yeah, dirty Irish.
How many of us got killed, getting blown up with trying to stick some dynamite in building some of those tunnels through those mountains, right? How many of us didn't get paid, the amount that we were worth, laboring for,
Oh hell! I mean, look at the coal miners. The story about that. Yeah. What about kids on the Appalachian Trail growing up in mud? I mean, come on.
Yeah, where does it stop? Where does it stop? I mean, seriously. Stop. For me, my personal attitude is basically, hey, I can spend all my time chasing down something that had nothing to do with me, or I can spend my time making a life for myself and helping me become more successful, train other people, help coach other people to become more successful, and just be a more productive citizen that's going to help move this country forward. It's not just chasing down past grievances that, I wasn't even alive during this time some of these atrocities were occurring. Yeah.
Bringing them from the old country here is another one. I mean, that's just too funny sometimes. I mean, I've overheard some of the things said, and all right, some of them came in my direction. Here's what I do. This is great. Do this. When someone makes fun of you, just laugh at them and say, you know what? That is really funny. That is a good one. Thank you. You made my day. I'm really cracking up about that. And they won't know what to do. Stop being so easily offended. There you go. Don't be easily offended. Have a thicker skin, especially if you're a politician, man, or no matter what you want to do in life, have a thicker skin. You just cannot get upset every time someone says something to you. The only thing I lose it, Yih-Chau, is when I'm driving. I just can't figure out people, like how hard is it to go in a straight line? How hard is it to use the blinker? How hard is it to know how to merge? How hard is it to make a right turn without swinging left first? Those little things. Like, put some effort into driving. That's all I ask. That'd be my main platform. If you're going to drive. Learn the rules of the road. Same for you people on the bikes. You're making me mashug with your mashugana stuff you do. That's all. Yeah. Today, I was on 287 in New Jersey, and I saw this truck being pulled over by the state police. And it had this light bar on the front, which blinds you. I don't know why you need a blinding light so that you could see the road, but blind everybody else, and so that everybody else gets killed around you. And I looked in the mirror. I told my wife, I go, that's one of those annoying lights. I can't stand those. It's like, 100 million candles and candle power. It's like what I used to use in the tank, the big spotlight, and it just blinds you. It's just horrible. Even during the day, it blinds you. And then I saw the same guy got pulled over by the state cop. And I'm like maybe 20 miles down the road. He caught up to me and passed me. I'm like, obviously, he did not learn a lesson. Just amazing. So listen, if you're listening, viewing, please, when you're on the road, concentrate. Pay attention to what's going on around you. That's all I ask. Very simple thing.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Over here in California, it's pretty much the same thing. We have some of the worst drivers in the country. So, I can definitely relate.
All right. So let's move on to, there was a massive brawl, and this is in relationship to something we said earlier where people are they're becoming unhinged on both sides. They're starting to go, you know what? I've had it. I think we all get to that point. I want you to think about growing up and how you kept pushing your parents until they lost it on you. Or for me, it was my grandmother. I'll never forget the day when we were so rowdy. She came in with the knife in her hand and threatened to stab us. I was like, all right, knock it off. You know, you went too far. So there's a boiling point that everybody has. And I think we're starting to reach it. And this is a massive brawl between Antifa, BLM, and I don't know who they are, the Proud Boys. This sounds like, you know what this sounds like, a wrestling match? This sounds like WWE. We got, no holds bar, chairs and ladders and tables, Antifa, BLM, and Proud Boys. What happened?
Well, basically, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, you had the Proud Boys basically saying, "Hey, we're going to hold a rally here," and Antifa found out about it and said, "No, we're gonna come and do what we do and cause some violence." So they went out there, and of course, Proud Boys, they're they're well aware of what Antifa's tactics are, so they came prepared. They came in with pepper spray and shield and all kinds of other stuff. And actually, there was a guy, I think, with a gun there as well. I'm not entirely sure which side he was from, but I believe there was a revolver involved as well. So things are definitely escalating to the point where people are starting to rise up and starting to push back. And to be perfectly honest, I'm actually kind of happy to see that, because it just kind of goes to show that as Americans, we're not just all kind of rolling over and letting a socialist or a communist takeover of our country just happen without some kind of resistance, right?
Well, listen, one thing about Americans, we like to fight. It's part of our blood. We don't like to lose either. I mean, we go at it. I mean, this is why, thank God, we have sports, or when things were normal, we had something that was putting our energy into, instead of fighting each other. I'm a Giants fan. You might be a Dallas Cowboy fan. And we just go after each other. Eagle fan, Giant fan. I mean, it could be pretty nasty sometimes. And in San Francisco, you guys had your problems with baseball fans. I don't know what's going on there, but control yourself. But we always had that fight in us. We growing up, loved the war movies. Oh my gosh, is there anything better than a war movie? Is there anything better than the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy? And here's the thing, you should watch more of those Marvel movies, because I'm like, Thanos wants to depopulate the universe, and Captain America's like, no, we're not. Billions of people are not going to die because you think that this is the plan that we should go down. There's a lot of messages being transmitted in the Marvel series. And Stan Lee, man, this guy must have been a genius with these crystals and how the stories intertwine. I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this guy is just a modern day Shakespeare. How did he figure all of this stuff out? He's got all of these characters. It's amazing. And let me just tell you, ladies listening, my favorite superhero is Captain Marvel. I mean, why did they even waste time fighting with, getting everybody to amass and fight in the battle? Just get Captain Marvel, and she can figure out everything. She can fly through spacecraft, blow things up. She can go through space. She goes the speed of light. I mean, big, gigantic, poof, poof, poof. All we need is Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman, I guess, on the other side of things. But yeah, we love it. We watch these movies, and it's part of our culture, and we grow up bonding through sports. That's where athletics really brings us together, man. We bond through sports, and we don't have that. And it seems to me like this whole year, 2020 sucks. Can't wait for 2021. This whole year, listen, one thing after another. We had the impeachment, then COVID-19, and then borders are closing. We can't travel anywhere. People are dying here in New Jersey. I mean, it was really bad. And you got people saying it's a hoax. And we'll get to if President Trump actually said that, because I don't know the context of anything. But I will say this, a sidebar comment. You'd be amazed how someone's words can be twisted against them, and how you can concentrate only on 3 seconds of what somebody says and make that the gist or the whole message that's being transmitted. We have to do a better job of getting the whole story. When you are a parent and you have to punish your child and send him or her to the room, don't you want to make sure that you got everything right before you make that final decision, before you make your judgment? Don't you want to make sure that you got all the evidence in to make sure there's no misunderstanding? You might ask several times just to be sure because the consequences, there are consequences. And I'll never forget this bad decision made by my dad. And I guess he was in a bad mood. This is true what happened. And I give you an example how long lasting this affects you. My brother was giving my mother a hard time. And I was dressed ready for the Marine Academy. I'm in my naval uniform, all primmed and proper, got the hat on, ready to leave the door, just had some breakfast. My dad comes running down and pops me right in the mouth, thinking it was me that mouthed off to my mother. I mean, he hit me hard, knocked me out of the chair, Cheerios go all over my uniform. And my mom goes, "Why did you do that?" It wasn't even him. And my brother walked away unscathed, but I took the consequences for that. Obviously, my dad had something against me at that time. And to this day, I haven't forgotten it. So what's the message here? No, I don't hate my dad. I love my dad. He's crazy, but I love him. The message is make sure that you know what you're doing before you go and do it, especially if violence is required. You got to manage your violence, right? I mean, when you're using a firearm, Yih-Chau, it's very important to understand everything that goes in and the responsibility that goes along with having a firearm in your house. You have to be trained. I think you should have to be qualified. Obviously, there are the background checks. I really don't have a problem with that. When we start to do this red flag stuff where we determine whether someone's crazy or not, I think that's a little above and beyond because what does that take? It means somebody drops a dime on you and because that person says you're crazy, they have to investigate you. I don't know how that works, but you know as well as I do, and I'm a military background, we got to make sure that we know how this weapon operates. I have to be responsible with it. I have to know the dangers of it. I have to know the safeties involved. I have to clean my weapon. I have to take care of my weapon. I got to make sure that nobody takes it from me. I mean, we're on FTX at West Point, and I knew that those kids were going to come after my weapon, my M16. I had that wrapped around me. I slept with it. They tried all they couldn't get it out of me. So this is how you have to really take this stuff seriously because lives depend on it. Now, when it comes to making decisions about how you proceed, whether you're with the BLM movement, whether you're with Antifa, whether you're with the Proud Boys, you're going to lose the message when it breaks out in violence. All anybody's going to see you guys knocking the crap out of each other. We'll be sitting there eating the popcorn, choosing a side, I suppose. But this is where things devolve. And also, much like my dad who punched me in the face, he took it out in the wrong target, right? Your fellow citizens are not the targets. If you have a message that you need to deliver, you got to bring it to the White House. You got to bring it to the Houses of Congress. You got to go to City Hall. You have to go to, I don't know, stand out there in front of the Supreme Court. Your fellow citizens, they're not the ones responsible for the mess we're in. It's our representatives. So hold them accountable and stop beating the crap out of each other because it's not helpful. What is it edifying? Who's stronger? What I see is mental weakness when it gets to that point. Listen, I don't want to go to war, Yih-Chau. Really don't. But if you push me hard enough, like most Americans, we'll do it. And we won't think twice. And we'll do a good job and we'll get it done. That's the way we are. So there's a lot going on. And again, it brings us to a lot of people really having a hard time on so many different levels, and the anxiety and the anger and all of this stuff. And it's bubbling. It's boiling over. And it's the consequences are bad. That's why we have this suicide prevention hotline. I'm not joking around about this stuff. It's no joke, So get the help you need. And another thing too, people are destroying themselves on Facebook. The self-destructive, comments. You think that it's just benign, that nobody's going to notice. There's a lot of people, Yih-Chau, that I'm not going to hire for my company moving forward. Not because they disagree with me, but because they're just insane. Okay, their arguments are just preposterous, over the top, and they're bullies. And I don't want to be surrounded by people like that.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? I mean, but you have to also, realize that, the comments that you're seeing on social media, like, Facebook and whatnot, a lot of this is it's a sign of a greater societal malaise that, is gripping us from, basically all sides, right? I mean, you have, we as a country, increasingly we're finding out that we don't have the shared values that we once had, together, right? So now when we're talking to each other, it's ad hominem attacks. It's looking into to see what the worst possible intentions could be from the other side, and just use that as the starting point, right? And honestly, whenever you've reached this point in society, from a historical standpoint, it's very hard to come back and kind of restore order, without some kind of unfortunately some kind of violent release. And I'm afraid that's kind of where we find ourselves in this day and age. So as much as the individual is responsible for their own comments and what they say, you're right. But it's also reflective of that greater societal malaise that kind of has gripped us as a country, and really exposed a lot of fissures of rage throughout the world, right? So it's kind of like what you and I have been talking about before in the past, which is going to come first. Is it going to be a world war? Is it going to be the Civil War? Or what is it going to be? Because it seems like we're racing ahead on both fronts. Who knows which one's going to hit us first?
Well, if I was the enemy without, I'd make sure I destroy them within before I attack. So, pay attention. We don't live in a vacuum where you cannot take the Communist Chinese Party lightly. We talked about some of the internal situations that are going on in China right now, the People's Republic of China. The people are good people. It's their government that we have the problem with. And we have to hold them accountable if this COVID-19, which I think it's a bioweapon, military grade bioweapon that was unleashed on the world. And they're going to have to be held accountable for that. We talked about various ways we can do that. But, think, it's 2020. We don't have these world wars anymore. Oh, yeah, no nukes are going to, be flying at any one of us. I think it's rather presumptuous to think otherwise. I mean, we got to take this. This is a threat. The Russians they're not really something that they're not our enemy. We should be working more with them, right? I mean, we have a lot more in common with the Russians. The Chinese are trying to take us out on every facet you can imagine, economically, technologically, stealing our tech, militarily. The fact that on a medical level, at one point when this COVID-19 crisis started to prop itself up or become a pandemic or whatever you want to call it, I find out that 90% of our pharmaceutical ingredients come from China. Like, what are you, absolutely insane? And what's the result of this? 30 years ago, everybody wanted cheap drugs. That was a campaign thing. Well, you want cheap drugs? We can do that for you. And it was the Republicans, I think, George Bush, right? We can get you a cheap drug. Sure, no problem. Oh, well, they didn't tell you the devil in the details of the deals they had to make to do that. And, Americans overall, we want good stuff and we want it cheap. We want to live like the billionaire. We have to have the biggest freaking TV. Got to have 65-inch, 75. I don't know what it is. I want one on the side of a wall now. And I want one in every room. Okay. And all of these goods that you want, they're not needs. They're not necessities. So that the materialism is killing us, right? That's part of the thing. The American dream. I don't know. It's turned into American nightmare. I don't even know what the American dream is. You can't even afford a house anymore. The taxes are too high. And by the way, you're never really going to own that house because, in essence, the government owns it. Because if you don't pay the taxes on it, even if you pay the mortgage, they'll take it away from you, and they'll let somebody have it for pennies on the dollar. Well, then
sorry about homeownership, man. I'm telling you, we could be sitting here talking for the next 5 hours about homeownership.
Well, it's highly overrated. Let me just say, you're just better off rent. Now,
my question to our audience is to get them to think. Right? It's always what's the truth? It's do you own the house or does the house own you?
Same thing with your car. The famous song.
Sure.
Everybody says I own my car, but my car owns me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And none of this stuff you can take with you. So what do we got left? How people are going to remember you, your legacy. How do you want to be remembered? You want to be remembered as that a-hole that was always popping off on Facebook? I had one guy, I felt bad. He died from COVID-19. It was going off. It was just a hoax. It was a myth. And at one point, I my wife did a fundraiser. I'm not going to bring up any names, but she did a fundraiser. He originally gave money to that, and he realized it was going to people that he didn't agree with their lifestyle, and he took it back. And I'm like, you know what? I can't be friends with someone like that. I mean, you know, like there's people suffering with diseases. It doesn't matter how they got it. Like, why can't you just like give the 50 and drop it? You're not perfect, right? None of us are. But, you know, after he passed away, that's all I think about. It's like how he, you know, took back money that was supposed to help people in need. Do you want to be remembered that way? It doesn't make him a bad guy, right? But I'm just saying as an example, how the things that you do can leave a lasting impression. We go back to my dad, him punching me out while I'm dressed for, you know, ready to go to the academy, getting ready for inspection, right? I got food all over me. I gotta figure out what to do with the uniform to get ready. And then if I get gigged and I don't pass inspection, do you think I'm going to tell the commander that my dad popped off and hit me? He probably say, well, why don't you get back up and tear his lungs out? You know, something like that. But, you know, when my dad dies, I'll always have that thought about how he did that, right? That's something you can't forget. So maybe we got to like do a better job of being more forgiving and, you know, trying to listen to what the other person is saying. And maybe, right, not thinking the worst of everybody. We've all done this. How many times you got in a text with somebody, you don't know the context, like you're the son of a bitch. I'm going to like, and then you find out that it's not even close to what you thought the person meant. Elderly people like to send emails in all caps. That doesn't mean they're yelling, right? It's like, so you got to like, listen, when you do that, you know, you're yelling, right? Oh, I didn't know that. So these little nuances, we gotta pay attention to the social cues. Police officers, you have over 5 million firemen, fire people, EMT workers. You have over 5 million people on the spectrum. That means living with autism. If you get in a situation where you're trying to get somebody with autism to respond to your command, they might not be able to do so. So you can't assume the worst. This happened, this poor boy in Denver, right? In the Denver area. You heard about this? This kid, he was shot by the police. He was playing violin for animals. That's what he liked to do. Oh, wow. I forget. I think his name was Isaiah. And, you know, when the George Floyd stuff started to prop up, the parents of this kid, we can look it up quickly. Maybe you can look it up while I'm talking about it. His name is Isaiah. He's from Colorado. He, I guess, was on the spectrum. He used to love playing his violin for animals. And he didn't respond correctly to the police because they didn't understand that this kid was on the spectrum and didn't communicate. He wasn't hurting anybody. All right. But because we have a lack of training, a lack of understanding, a lack of love, and we always think the worst of people, this boy ends up dead. He was an African-American kid. That breaks my heart. There's no justice for this kid. Just sharing his music to make stray cats feel better. I mean, come on, man. You know, I mean, nobody's talking about him or his loss and his rights and the rights of other kids that are on the spectrum and how they get used as free labor, and they call it community-based instruction. Well, if you're going to teach people how to work, you also have to teach them how to deal with a paycheck too. So when someone is working for you, CBI here in New Jersey, and they don't get paid, that's called slavery, as far as I know. So, did you find a story on Isaiah?
Elijah McClain.
Elijah. I'm sorry. That's it. Elijah McClain. Okay. You know, as you get older, by the way, boys and girls, you start to forget names. You know, took me forever to think of Annie Lennox the other day in a conversation. You know, the chick from Eurythmics. Her. So Elijah McClain. Yeah. Why don't you read a little bit of that story? Because you got it right in front of you.
Yeah. Right? So it looks like there was an unarmed 23-year-old black man who died after police stopped him. I guess the Colorado governor wants a probe. So we'll go ahead and read the news real quick here. This happened on June 25th, facing mounting pressure from the public. Colorado.
Last year, yeah, but the incident was like last year, not this past year. But on June 25th is when we revisit the story. Go ahead.
Okay. Colorado Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat, vowed on Wednesday to explore how the state could re-examine the 2019 death of Elijah McClain, a 23-year-old black man who had died after being detained while walking down the street in Aurora, Colorado. McClain's death had come back into the public spotlight during the last month of demonstrations against racism and police brutality following the death of George Floyd, who was killed after police in Minneapolis pinned him to the ground for several minutes. McLean was walking home wearing a ski mask and dancing to music on August 24th, 2019, when someone called 911 to report him as suspicious. Police tried to stop him, but he kept walking, insisting he had done nothing wrong and he had a right to continue his walk. Then the officers tackled him, placed him in a chokehold, and restrained him. The paramedic who arrived on scene later injected him with ketamine to subdue him. McLean had a heart attack while being taken to the hospital. He suffered brain damage, was placed on life support until he died on August 30th, 2019, the Denver Post reported.
Oh, well, you know what? There's a bunch of stuff missing in that news, like the exact conversation and also his last words, right? So if, let's just say for the sake of the argument, this kid has autism, all right? And he takes everything literally. And he's not going to respond to, stop, hey, I'm doing nothing wrong. In his mind, he's not doing anything wrong. Why would I stop, right? So where's the breakdown here? And I think that, and we've talked about this, I think, with Brig and another guest, the breakdown on the police side of things, not to like just say that there are no problems here, because there's some real problems. And I notice it with the younger crop. And I've had the guys in my age, right? They're all captains and inspectors, and they're in the Army and the Navy. They might be captains and generals, all high ranking, right? And when you're in your upper 50s, that's the level you usually end up on after years of service. Could be master sergeant, whatever. The point being, the younger guys just not like the old guard, I suppose. They can't relate to him in any ways. I can understand that generation gap, but we defund the police, who really need more funding for better training to stop these kind of incidents from happening, like George Floyd or this kid, is it Isaiah? Or did I get the name right? Elijah. This young boy, Elijah, who, his mind, he was doing nothing wrong. When you actually read the dialogue that took place, and I don't know how they acquired, I started to cry. I couldn't believe it, because I could just be there and see this poor young man, really a 23-year-old, to me is a baby. Okay. I'm a young person. This is horrible. What about the justice for this kid? Right? Nobody's like doing any demonstrations and how wrong that is. Nobody's stepping up to the plate saying, hey, you can't use people with special needs for free labor or pay them less than everybody else. Hey, you want to know what the minimum wage did? I talked to one dad. This idea of $15 minimum wage in New Jersey and New York.
Mm-hmm.
This kid was working at a supermarket, loved the job, man. Paid him $10 an hour, I think, or maybe $9. I don't know what the minimum wage was, but when it went to 15, the owner of the company said, look, I $10 is one thing for this kid, but spending $15, for the same kid. No, I have to get somebody who's worth $15 an hour. I mean, that's basically the conversation. Put nicely, by the way. But what about that kind of discrimination? Why is that okay? Right? Why isn't anybody upset about that? You imagine taking advantage of somebody who's got special needs, paying them less because they're special needs. By the way, a lot of those special needs kids, that during the height of this pandemic in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, they're the ones that are stocking the shelves. They're the ones that are putting their lives on the line, making sure that everybody else gets food. Right? Nobody worried about them. Nobody has a thank you banner for those kids, those young adults. They're precious people. They need the rest of us to look out for them. That's what America's about. You look out for the people that don't have the ability to stand up for themselves. This is what you should be protesting when a 23-year-old young man, regardless of his race, creed, or color, is stricken down because he can't comply to rules he doesn't understand because they're not trained properly to deal with them. That's a concern, right? It's a concern because you're putting the police officers in harm's way that could devastate their career and their livelihood and their lives, and you're also putting the public at large at jeopardy. This is a lose-lose situation, not win-win. So we need more training for police officers. And by the way, the idea of replacing police officers with social workers to respond to calls is the biggest ludicrous crap I've ever heard in my life, right? No, you need armed police officers to respond to most of these situations because they have the ability to use whatever force necessary that they might encounter to put an end to the situation. They don't know when they're going into the house what they're going to find, right? Most of us would have not on 9/11 run down to World Trade Center with our gear in our back, or even if we're off duty, to run into the buildings that are on fire with stuff falling all over the place and bodies falling out of windows. Most of us would not think of doing that. These guys did. Most would not think about, gunshots fired. Let me get there as fast as I can. Right? I want you to think about, some of the things that these guys have to face. Nobody ever talks about some of the bodies that they find and what happens to some of these children that they have to, take care of along the way. Nobody talks about that, right? So if we're going to try to discover what the truth is, then sometimes the truth is ugly and the truth hurts. But unless you start to really focus on some of the issues and come up with some solutions instead of just saying, I don't like it, I disagree. Well, all right, what are you going to do about it? I think many times, Yih-Chau, I not only point out something, but I do offer some solutions that might or might not work. These are common sense things like love thy neighbor, right? Better training. And were you in the military? I had never asked you this. Okay. We talked with Brig about this. We would drill a lot in the military. I was talking about the time I was up in West Point, how I slept with the rifle, right? How I kept it tight. It's called an FTX, field training exercise. And then they have advanced individual training and all this other stuff. But we go through the scenarios, every possible scenario. And then we try to figure out solutions. And they're in real time, real life scenarios using real people, fake bullets, thank God. And, you get rated, there's observers, and we're really trying to work things out. All right. Figure out how it goes. We even at one point would run just battles via communication. When the communications, you have to use your code books. What happens when you think that you've, the intelligence, the enemy intelligence has gotten your codes and they know what they are, how to change the codes, how to acquire military intelligence, what to look for, all of these things, constant drilling on what to do in situations, drilling with the weapon over and over again so that you can basically pull it apart and put it back together in the dark where you can't see. That's how good you have to be with the weapon. Your life depends on it. So we don't take any of these things as seriously as we should, and as our lives depend on it. Even with your education, your life depends on it. Even with your medical care, your life depends on it. Your life depends on you. I mean, you really have to do a much better job, especially if you have the ability to do so. The people without that, special needs people that can't stand up for themselves, people that are stuck in the wheelchair, people that are blind, people that are deaf, people that don't have cognitive ability. It's all of our jobs to make sure that they're okay. That's what America is about. Maybe we just lost what our values are along the way because we're arguing over things that we shouldn't be arguing about and fighting about things that we shouldn't be fighting about. You and I, we don't look anything alike. Well, maybe a little bit, but but what difference does that make? It really should make no difference. And by the way, if you have a friend who's racist, they shouldn't be your friend. Which brings us to this. I don't understand how people in Hollywood and some people I know on the radio were friends with Donald Trump before he was president, playing golf with him and accepting the big checks. And he was giving money to the Clintons and I think the Harris and probably Biden and this. I don't understand how they were friends with such a horrible human being. I mean, I got to question your judgment too. That would be my thing. I wasn't friends with him before. You were always friends with this guy. Now you hate him. I don't understand. Please tell me why. And if you knew he was a racist, why were you hanging out with him?
Yeah,
those are good questions, right? So that's my whole thing. So obviously,
Donald.
Go ahead.
He's the personification of the American success story, right? I mean, you and I were talking about the American dream, just a little bit ago, and the American dream is to be Donald Trump, and even President Barack Obama, stated some semblance of that statement, right? To achieve Donald Trump's status and wealth in our country today is it's a meaningful achievement that a lot of people should look up to and serve as he should serve as an inspiration, right? Of course, as soon as he became president, now he's the worst racist ever, and all these guys who were rapping about them in their rap songs and on their albums, now he's a persona non grata, and I mean the guy he's a cultural icon. He's somebody who has been in our consciousness for decades as somebody who's succeeded big, who's failed big, who's bounced back, and those are the types of guys that you need. You want people like this to lead your country or lead a large organization, because not only do they know how to succeed, but they also know they learn the hard lessons from their failure so that they can avoid those mistakes while leading an even bigger organization moving forward. Right.
And I don't care who you are. Every family's got dirty laundry, which I just mentioned a little while ago about my dad punching me in the face and almost knocking me out. All right. So there's an example of that. So we all make mistakes, and nobody's perfect. So let's not pretend that anybody's righteous in any of this. We all fall short. I don't know if he's the American dream. For everybody's got a different dream, right? But it should be a healthy dream. For me, I just want to be remembered as a good guy who helped a lot of people. That's all I want people to remember me as. I want to be that guy. This is what I like to do. I like to make lives better for people that don't get a fair shot. These kids with special needs, they don't get a fair shot. They're not treated fairly. They're treated poorly. I want to help level the playing field for them. So I'm going to do whatever it takes on my side of things to do what I can to make that happen. And I'll be joyful over that. Notice my goal is not to have a gigantic house, a yacht, and all of those things. I just want to see the joy and happiness on a lot of faces. I want people to be able to have good medical care, that they don't have to wait like some of my friends over in the UK. They're under NHS, National Hospital, whatever. And it's horrible. You have to wait months and months. You think I'm making this up, but I'm not. Just ask somebody who lives there. Why is it that everybody, as crappy as our healthcare system is, quote unquote, why does everybody, when they really need expert care, come to the United States? Don't go anywhere else. Maybe Israel. They got pretty good health care out there. But, we're a great country. We have a lot of good things. Stop pointing out all the bad stuff. If you keep pointing out the bad stuff, everything is bad, right? But there was a study just the other day. If you even fake a smile, you'll be in a better mood before you know it. So sometimes you just got to fake the smile. But at the same time, you got to understand where the stench is coming from. And when you understand where the stench is coming from, you got a choice. Live with it or do something about it. And if you're going to do something about it, make sure that it is for all the right reasons and for the good and not just for yourself. See, if you start getting selfish, then you're going to find that you're never going to be happy. You can't make enough money to make yourself happy. Hey, listen, making money doesn't hurt. Right? Being poor is not fun. But I've seen some of the most joyous people are some of the poorest. Some of the poorest people, they're going to get to heaven well before I do. Right? So, and here's another little pet peeve. He had good parents. His father was a doctor. Mother was a lawyer. No, you know what? A good parent can be the custodian. One of the greatest men I ever met in my life was Mr. Jarman, Mr. Glenn Michael Jarman. He was the janitor at St. Catherine's. He taught me so much. He taught me how to scrub floors. He taught me how to paint. He taught me how to roof. He taught me how to do siding. He taught me how to clean things. He taught me how to work. Like this idea of, hey, you can talk and work at the same time, right? He would tell me that. He would say, you can get it done now and rest later. You want to leave?
My boss used to tell me that you can talk and work at the same time. When I was a young guy at maybe 20 years of age, yeah, absolutely, you can talk and work at the same time.
And here's another thing. He didn't have much money, but boy, he was generous. I mean, there was one Christmas we didn't have any toys. He made sure we got toys. All right. That's the kind of man you wanted. That's a good man. All right. Donald Trump, talk about this. Now, I know two people that interacted with him. One got a gigantic check to help his son out with a rare form of kidney disease, FSGS, it's called. So the one radio personality who I will say, I really don't like this guy. Oh man, buddy playing golf with him. He was there for the check. I did all the work, but he was there to take the check from Donald Trump and hand it over to my friend, right? As soon as he ran for office, the same guy was on the air saying, well, this guy's a bum, he's a racist, all of these horrible things about him. Then I have another friend of mine, he's a rock star, who worked for Donald Trump. And I go, well, he doesn't like him. He's not voting for him, I guess. He goes, he was an a-hole to work for. I go, was he a racist? He goes, no, he was never a racist. He was just an a-hole to work for. I go, there are people who work for me who think I'm an a-hole too. I go, it's going around. 9 times out of 10, if you're a good boss, someone thinks you're an a-hole because you're doing your job right. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, you got to think about the perspective of things. What is a good person? What's a bad person? A bad person just does stuff like hang out on Epstein Island and is a pedophile. That's a bad person. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to say that that's acceptable. It's a bad person. You're a bad person. You're doomed. Okay. That's an example of the worst type of people on the planet that should be removed. All right. Being an a-hole boss isn't the worst person in the world. Chances are that guy is doing the job he was supposed to do. So, maybe we got to stop, thinking that success is being the next Donald Trump or even being the president of the United States. I think the success starts with who you are at this particular time, because this is the person that you're living with and that you're going to go with as you get older, right? You got to gain some wisdom, and life isn't easy, man. It's hard. But I'll tell you this. You ever see somebody who's young, who's dying, they fight as much as possible to stay alive. What does that tell you, Yih-Chau? What's the truth about that?
Well, the truth is instinctually, you have this, survival instinct, right? So you'll do everything that you can it's actually gone, well beyond, so I can tell you that, I've been in that position myself. I was, stabbed 10 times when I was 21. And, I can tell you that, what you feel and, what you get, it's almost like the system takes over. You're kind of it tries to override the most primitive part of your brain. Kind of kicks in and just does everything it possibly can, to try to survive. I mean, you will do anything and everything for just for that one last gasp of breath, right? One last gasp of air. So instinctually, on the most primitive sense, that's kind of what takes over. Right? I don't think it's very difficult for you from a conscious mind to even fight that, because you're supposed to survive. You're supposed to reproduce. These are all instinctual things that are wired into you that you have honestly very little control of when they're actually activated. So. These are things that, a lot of people don't understand. They haven't been, through that experience. And, unfortunately, some of us have. But I mean, that survival instinct is powerful beyond measure. I can only tell you that from personal experience.
Well, now I know why you need to be armed. I mean, I don't blame you on that. So someone's listening. Oh, he's a Second Amendment nut activist, right? Well, all the labels that you have to put up with. They don't know you've been stabbed 21 times. I can tell you, anybody, no matter who you are, if you've been stabbed 21 times, you're going to say, listen, I am not going to let that happen again. I'm getting a gun.
10 times, not 21 times, 10 times.
Yeah. Oh, 10 times? I thought it was.
Yeah, not 21.
All right, 10 times is still more than. I cringe at a paper cut. Okay. I'd rather be shot than stabbed. That's how I feel. So yeah, you better believe if I was in your shoes, I'm like, this will never happen again. I'm taking kung fu, jiu-jitsu, and karate, and I'm going to be armed to the teeth. I'm going to take it all, or that Brazilian, whatever that is, that martial art, whatever the most lethal is, I'm taking it, because that will never happen to me again. So I'm sorry to hear that, and it has devastating long-term consequences. And when you hear that story, you got to say, oh, all right, well, now you know why. All right. Well, it is what it is. So let's try to get to more of these stories here. And I know that we got a little bit off the path, but there's some necessary things that we have to talk about in the course of a conversation that make you think, make you start to analyze what's going on. I don't ever want to get in a situation where Democrat bad, Republican good, Republican bad, Democrat good. That's just no way to look at it. And here's the other thing. In that story we read about that kid from Colorado, what difference did it make what party the governor was? Right?
Sure.
So why does that even matter? It should not even be part of the discussion. You're the governor. It doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. You better do something about this situation. This is not good. We can't have a repeat. And that poor mother, what are you going to do about her? You know, like, she lost her son, man. So what is justice? I mean, come on. So that's the other thing. It doesn't matter if someone's doing a bad or good job, whether a Democrat or Republican. I'm sorry, you're an American or you're not, I guess. You have a responsibility once you get into that position. And by the way, if you win, you represent all of us, like it or not. So you better love all of us, like it or not. It's like just a big family that you're in charge of, I guess. So, you know, I guess our politicians really got to step it up a little bit. They expect a lot from us. We should expect more from them. And then this distinction, they don't rule over this. I get the sense when I watch these people, they think they're our rulers. We know it's going to be. We're going to tell you, you're going to comply with what I say, or, you know, forget it. It doesn't work like that. Again, let's help people that have this political ideology to maybe give them some tips on how to properly address government and to exercise their freedom of speech, because you've done it many times as a Second Amendment advocate. So how about we spend a little time, if someone is a member of BLM or Antifa or Proud Boys or whatever they want to call themselves, or some sort of militia, or what is it? There's constitutional groups all over the place. Convention of States, I know that group, no matter who they are. What are some, in your mind, good strategies to let politicians know that they have to address an issue? What's the healthy way of doing it? What's the proper way to engage representatives? What's the best way to get the support of the public to go along with you?
Well, I think you hit the most important part, which is, to be peaceful, right? So, being peaceful and when you're protesting is, absolutely critical towards getting your point across. People who see, a very strong emotional reaction, such as, anger, that's, manifests itself in, looting or rioting is going to be turned off to the message, right? So, you want to be able to go out there, be polite, be articulate, have a same consistent message that you're delivering to the press, and hopefully have the same guy who's out there speaking on your behalf, right? You also want to go out to the state capitol and sit down, make appointments with your state senators and state assembly members, and talk to them personally and just put a name to the face. Just say, hey, yeah, you might have seen me on the local news, or or whatever newscast you're watching, and I just want to come here, introduce myself, and let you know that we're serious about the message that we're trying to put together. We'd love to see where we can find some common ground and maybe work together on some of the issues that we're trying to raise the public awareness. If you're able to do that, then people can see that you're not threatening. People can see that you're genuinely concerned about certain issues that they may not have been aware of before, and everybody's a lot more open to these ideas that they weren't either never taught in school, or never really considered beyond the scope of their normal day-to-day conversations, right? So that's kind of the key. Through a peaceful protest, you're able to drive change. And here in California, we my group, the Responsible Citizens of California, we we're primarily a right to carry organization, but we defend gun rights in general as well, especially here in California. And over the past decade, if you take a look at the California Department of Justice statistics, their own statistics show that we've had 171% increase in the number of legal gun owners throughout the entire state. And no matter how many gun control laws you pass, if we're able to drive the number of legal gun owners up and up and up, essentially we're going to get political power one way or another. So we're going to be able to turn around some of these, gun control laws, moving forward. But that's essentially how you do it. It's not always the the sexy, loud, violent, boisterous, type of protest to get you the results you want. You actually want to kind of keep everything quiet in terms of the growth that you're able to kind of inspire, because all of a sudden your opponents are kind of caught off guard that that you've become as powerful as you are, that your movement has grown as strong as it is, and even here now, there in California, God knows how many millions of new gun owners we've minted during this COVID crisis, right? So the numbers keep on going up and up and up, and it's simply because you have people who have the courage and the backbone to stand up and speak the truth and say, hey, having a gun might not be such a bad idea when you're living in a society where they're releasing tens of thousands of prison convicts onto the streets because of COVID-19, and they're scaling back and trying to defund the police, and trying to take away your guns at the same time, and that doesn't help you as somebody who has a wife and children. That's not something that places you in a very good position.
Yeah, it's not always about you. It's about the people that you're required to protect. Like, you're the father of the family. You better be able to protect your kids. If you're the mother, I mean, oh boy, don't get between a mother bear and her cubs, right? I mean, you got to be able to protect yourself and protect your loved ones. Full disclosure, I don't have any weapons in the house, but to me, this is my weapon. But I also think a little bit differently than other people. I assess threats all the time. And I think, all right, it happened this morning. I had to do something, and my daughter kind of laughed at me. But, I was like, this, when you see something that doesn't fit or it doesn't belong, you'll have to take notice. If you're on the subway, you got to look around you and you got to see, okay, what are the possible threats around me? And you just got to, take a quick survey, and, you can pretty much generally your intuition will tell you. And believe me, I think about 80 different ways of how I can defend myself in any situation. I guess it must be going back from the Army, because when you don't have any, rifle, when you don't have a weapon, you have to use hand to hand. So you're taught that kind of stuff. So I guess that helped in many ways. So I would, depend on these. Hopefully you don't get in that situation. But you never know. Maybe it's something I got to think about, right? One of these days, I don't know. The other thing too, because I was in the Army and I had to clean these so much, and the drill sergeants, after a while, you're like, that's too much of a bother. I don't want to have this thing. Got to clean it all the time, and you got to go to the range. But I did teach my daughter how to use a weapon. Went to a range down in North Carolina, filled out all the paperwork, went through the safety, and she was excellent at it. I still have the target in the back of my car. Believe it or not, I mean, when it comes to using weapons, I was always a good shot. Don't know why. It's like something you're born with, right? You just have that, like, of all the things to be. But I'll tell you, my daughter was afraid when she first saw a gun by whatever she was taught in school. There was this unusual fear of it, and I had to tell her to respect it, not fear it. It's nothing to be feared. It's nothing that could cause you danger unless it's pointed at you or you do something stupid with it. So you have to educate, right? But when I was a young kid, maybe 8 or 9, I joined the Sea Scouts, the New Jersey Naval Brigade, and we had summer and winter camp. And Mr. Kohler, he knew I didn't have any money, so he paid the $20. And back then it was a lot of money. He was a World War II vet, and another one of my heroes growing up. I mean, this guy just was a fantastic man. He was one of the first in New Jersey to have a special needs Boy Scout troop. Isn't that great? And great man, William Kohler. I'll never forget him. I mean, he is just a wonderful human being, like Mr. Jarman. Both have passed on. I'm sure they're up at the throne, hanging out with God right now. Great people. But because of him and him showing me, and we'd have, we'd go on it. These World War II guys are teaching us how to use rifles, 22s, right? Bows and arrows, a proper way to, hold a knife, and all of these different things, how to survive out there in the woods, and how to sleep at night, and all of these really great things that, he taught me. It goes a long way. If you start to educate people on a variety of things, think about a Renaissance education, a real liberal education, a free education, the way it's supposed to be, where you're learning about literature and you're learning about, foreign languages. English and grammar and math and chemistry and theology and philosophy, and you make it exciting, people are just going to want to learn more. They'll become sponges. And if you show them how to, like, put a tent up, I use the expression pitch a tent, and everybody goes, "Oh, he said pitch a tent," but pitch a tent. How to, like, dig out the dirt so you're not swamped with water if it should rain on you. Where to place the tent. How to put the spikes in. How to use your bedrolls. How to go out there and forage for food. What's poisonous and what's not. My grandmother, man, she used to take the mushrooms out of the back and make something out of them. You got to know what you're doing with mushrooms, right? What snakes to avoid, what snakes you can handle, right? I'll tell you this, don't screw with a copperhead, all right? Just go in the other direction. What to do when a bear comes at you in the woods. How do you deal with wildlife, right? All of these amazing things. And I'm from the New York City area learning this, and there are people in rural areas that don't know that. Boy, the education system has failed people. How to boil water. I mean, come on, there's some people can't even boil water. They think cooking is, putting things in the microwave. That's not cooking, right? How to these survival skills. These are all good things. Common sense. How to talk while you work. That's a good skill to have. Work ethic. Another one. Mr. Drummond, go back to him. I was working at school in the summertime. It was like 3:00, so the kids are getting out. So I start wrapping up my work. He goes, "Oh, do you want to be paid less?" I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Our day doesn't stop at 3. Our day stops at 5. We got to clean up the school, unless you don't want to make as much money as you could." I'm okay. I went right back to work. So these little things, parents, aunts, uncles, big brothers, even young children can teach older people amazing things. Just gotta, get back to the basics. I think this is the problem here. If you were to tell the truth about what the problem is, we don't have the basics down. We're a horrible football team. We don't know how to block. We don't know how to, control the ball. We don't, we run the wrong plays. Everybody's on, running their own individual routes. We're not a good team. I mean, look at the United States. We're not a good team anymore. All over the place. You got no direction, and then all of a sudden, this is another interesting observation. I thought the war on terror, I mean, all of a sudden, it's no longer the war on terror. ISIS isn't an issue anymore. Now, we heard Brigg. He says that, they're waiting in the wings, but what happened to that? What's really going on? What's the truth? So, all right, those are all macro kind of concepts, but we're doing a bad level on the micro level. But how's your local community doing? Before you can go tell people who they should vote for, what are you doing in your own town? And before you complain about your local politicians, what are you doing to help? Are you volunteering any of your time? Are you on the zoning board? You volunteering there? Are you a volunteer fireman? I know it's archaic to say fireman, but I know women do that too. We just call them firemen. Are you volunteering for the ambulance corps? Are you doing auxiliary police duty? Are you, volunteering at the local school to help the kids during lunch? What are you doing? What do you think? I have a liberal friend. So I go, well, what's your responsibility? He goes, that's why I pay taxes. I'm like, oh, well, no, I'm sorry. Paying taxes does not get you off the hook of helping other people. That's not what this is about. You cannot pay to get rid of the problems. That's another thing. We just think we throw more money at it. It's the fix. It's not the fix. It's like we got to get to the core, right? Our guiding principles, our foundation. We got to look at these systems that are failing and say, all right, what do we have on this thing that works? Think of Apollo 13. And anything that's not working, that's not contributing, get rid of it. It's not necessary. Let's get back to the basics. When are we going to have leaders that say, oh, it's time to get back to the basics? I mean, maybe that was what resonated with Trump in 2016, because make America great again. Yeah, you know what? We weren't great because we weren't a good team. We're not a good team. We're fumbling the ball. We're not finishing the drives. We're just, playing 60 minutes, and at the end, we're lucky if we play to a tie. Things aren't working all over the place. There's corruption all over the place. There's no more standards. Anybody feels like they can do whatever they want. It's my right to do this and my right to do that. But, telling everybody else how they should live. Yesterday, I got yelled at because I was sitting there minding my own business, and this was a Trump supporter. Hey, take off your mask and breathe the fresh air. I go, I'm thinking to myself, I didn't ask you, and my mask wasn't on because I'm eating, so it's impossible to do. What's the big deal with the mask? If it makes other people feel okay, all right. You think it's mind control? Then don't let it control your mind. Just be a good neighbor. Don't fall for that crap. So, there's a lot of issues, but it comes down to that we forgot those values of maybe the World War II guys, the Mr. Kohlers, the Mr. Jarmans, and what we made fun of them because they never cursed. The worst thing that my wife's grandfather would say, "Son of a brick." So look at where we've fallen from and why. Because of the distortion in Hollywood, because of these politicians that everybody like. Well, do we really need these kind of people to lead us? And you know what? For a while, everybody was going after AOC. You know what? That's the American way. She ran for office. You didn't. Somehow she won. So got to give her some credit for that, right? You might disagree with her, but she's there. You're not. If you're in her district and you think that she's a bad choice for you, then why don't you get about 300 good people to donate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, your time right up until election. That's all you need. You'll take that seat. But again, everybody assumes that somebody else will do it.
Yeah. I mean, volunteering, I think, is always, it's given me a sense of, humility, right? I mean, even when I was in high school, I was part of, the peer support class. It kind of, helped, teenagers who were struggling with, just regular teenager stuff, depression, relationships, emotional distress, all that kind of thing. And, I volunteered as, at the local hospital. I volunteered as a peer tutor. I taught kids who were struggling academically on a variety of, general education subjects. So, those are all things that, help me to understand the struggles that, kind of other people kind of go through. So it gives me a better idea about, the people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. There's just, people put on a brave face when they're out in public, but, privately, there's just so much struggle that you just don't see, right? I mean, single mothers who, having to challenge raising their kids, fathers not in their lives, that entire thing, right? I mean, you have just huge challenges where people are not able to, overcome, what a lot of people think are basic things, but, it just wears on you. I mean, it just wears on you, right? So it's kind of like the suicide prevention hotline that you've posted here. People need help, they do. And, for us to be able to kind of support each other, and you're right, having this basic foundation of knowledge, knowing how to change a tire, knowing how to change your own oil,
yeah,
things like that. Right?
I know how to do all of that stuff, but I call AAA because I pay for that service. All right, there comes a time when Also, listen, 55 and over. Find some kid to shovel the snow. Don't go out there and do that. Bad things happen. Yeah, I mean, you gotta use your noggin. Knowing how to do it is a good thing. It doesn't mean that you should be the one doing it. What you can do, if you know how to do it, is coach somebody capable of doing it because they have physical ability, and say, "All right, here's how you change the tire. All right, grab that over there." Yesterday, I gave my daughter a new job, and it's automating some programming for 2 radio stations using Dropbox and a website. And I went down and I said, okay, you repeat this task and you keep doing it over and over again. And it's your job. As soon as you get up in the morning, she gets up at 5 a.m. It's her job. First thing she does is take care of those radio stations. And, obviously I know how to do it, but something, I have too many other things that I have to do. And she's my partner over here. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to teach you how to do this. And then after you learn how to do that, I'm going to teach you how to do something else. And then she'll do more and more of the work. And before you know it, she'll work her way up and she'll be sitting here and I'll be sitting over there where she is. And I'll be just going, okay, and she'll give me an assignment to do. And I get older. I'm like, Dad, can you do this on the Dropbox? Sure thing, honey. But even with the changing of the tire, take your kid out, show them how to safely do it, especially daughters. Don't think for all boys should learn how to cook and sew. Because when you're in the Army, you have to do those 2 things. You got to cook and sew. All girls should learn how to change the oil in their tire and put gas in the car. 3 things. And there's no such thing as blinker fluid. Don't fall for that. Check your blinker fluid. Your blinker fluid's a little low. Got to replace the blinker fluid. It's $400 to flush the blinkers and put the new fluid in. Don't fall for that stuff.
Right.
And by the way, if you're a mechanic who does that, shame on you. So these are the life skills that are necessary. Here's another good one. Please, thank you. You're welcome. Hi, my name is so-and-so. What's your name? Nice to meet you. So, what do you like to do? Basic conversations of how you talk to people. Men, control yourselves. No woman in her right mind is going to get in the car with you because you go, hey, you're hot. Look, beep, 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 beep. That doesn't work. I mean, if it does, please let the rest of us know. Have respect for women. They're not, you don't own them. They're not your property, even if you're married to them. Okay. This idea, women also, in the Bible, it says how a woman's supposed to be to her husband, but then most husbands skate right over how a husband is supposed to be towards his wife. You're supposed to lay down your life for your wife, right? Like the church, she is you, you're one. Okay. So there's a responsibility to everybody. Let's do more to support families. How about we talk about this for a little bit? You want to talk about issues that should you should be concerned about? Single moms. You cannot be a pro-life person and just think, okay, we're going to stop abortion, and after the child's there, you have no responsibility? Sorry. You have a responsibility. Now, here's one of the things that I do. Anytime I hear that one of my coworkers or a friend of mine has a baby, I go, what is it that you need? Right? It might need formula. It might need diapers. If they don't need either, I send a gift. I always send a gift. Make sure I send a nice gift. Usually the saucer, that thing, the circle saucer, babies love that. Right? It's got all those activities and stuff. So I'm the saucer guy. You're getting a saucer, some sort of the big cubes that babies like. Because there's one thing about me. I love babies. If I'm in the bad mood, all I have to see is a baby and I feel better. Babies and animals make me happy. So I'll always make sure that, if they don't need any of those other things, all right, I'll send the saucer. That's what I do. The other thing is the food pantries. I make sure there's one in Passaic that I'm trying to get funding and do what I can for. But I notice this. They have nothing nutritional there. There's crap in there. And it's not the fault of the food pantry. But honestly, we could make sure that babies get better nutrition with the baby food, that they get diapers, that they get formula, that we can develop programs in our communities that they get more wellness checks. We can be conservative about vaccines too. I know it's a hot issue with other people. That's not what I'm talking about. Let's make sure the baby's thriving. Is the baby, gaining weight properly? Does the baby have good nutrition? Does the mom have support? Do the parents have support? So instead of wasting our money on stupid stuff, that evaporates on corporate welfare, let's help the small guys, the local businesses, the small businesses, and these people, especially in areas where they have bilingual, but it's more like Spanish in Passaic that I'm talking about. I don't speak Spanish, but there's no research. And by the way, if you're an African American with autism or Latino American, or English is your second language and you're just new here and you have autism, boy, it's going to be a hard life for you, man. There's no resources. There's very little resources for special education. We do a great job of putting together football teams that 9 times out of 10 will disappoint you anyway. And we do very little for people we don't think that are worthy of a good education, of an investment in. So there's a lot of things that we can do in our own neighborhoods before we start worrying about who the president's going to be. Right? There's a lot of things we can do in this country before we worry about getting in the business of other countries. We got to help make this. We do have to make this country better. I mean, it makes no sense to me to tell my neighbor his grass needs to be cut when my grasses need to be cut. Right? The hypocrisy is a big thing. I just can't wrap my brain around hypocrisy. Harris with the, smoking pot, putting other people in prison for doing the same thing, leaving a guy in death row when she had exculpatory evidence. That to me is a character flaw. Give me something better to even look at. I mean, as a candidate, I don't mean physically, right? Somebody that's got some substance. Can you give me something better to choose from? No, you can't. So guess who's getting my vote? But we all know why I vote a certain way, because there's something immutable about me that I cannot change. That doesn't mean that you can't have a Democrat who's pro-life. I mean, what an odd thing. How about that? Wouldn't that be amazing? So there's these little things that we got to pay more attention to. And, anybody listening right now, you do have the ability to make a difference. You just got to want to. You got to maybe wake up a little bit earlier. Maybe, go visit your neighbors, see what they're up to, especially when you have elderly neighbors. And if you hear about a mom who's, single mom or single parent, let's just call it that way, single parent who's struggling, can you do a little something to help that person? If you're in a church group and you find that, someone really, they don't have that much food, get them some food, right? Don't start lecturing to people about how to live a great life when you're not doing anything to feed them. I mean, I think that's another biblical principle, I think somewhere. You think I would know that off the top of my head with my background. But yeah, I mean, we gotta like live living life to the fullest is not what everybody thinks. Living to the fullest means you're ready to go. And you know what I mean by ready to go, because you don't know when it's going to happen, but just be ready to go all the time, in season, out of season, whatever. You want the master to catch you doing the right thing when you least expect it. So yeah, our biblical principles on the side. This is just being a good human, a decent human being. Take care of animals, right? Don't abuse animals. There was a story here in New Jersey. These kids went to some petting zoo, and I see a picture of the young girl riding the miniature donkey. Now all the animals, they need special care because they're all frightened what these kids did. Well, who in their right mind abuses animals? I mean, seriously, come on, man. And I'll tell you, I told my wife, I go, you know what? If I was the dean of whatever college she's getting into and I saw that picture, she's not coming to my school. That's a consequence. Go somewhere else and maybe apply when you make good on that. So, these little things, volunteer, getting involved in the community, maybe calling up the mayor's office, say, hey, listen, I'm in town here. I was wondering, is there anything I could do to help? Simple. Yeah. Call a VFW, call the American Legion, call a hospital.
Yeah. Well, when was the last time anybody went to a city council meeting? Honestly.
Well, right now we're doing them. You got to, because of the social distancing, and they're doing them on like we're doing. That's what they're doing, Zoom meetings. But yeah, I mean, you really should every once in a while, like, make it. If you're not doing that now, try to do it once a quarter. Just start one time. Just go once, maybe once or twice a year. It's sort of like, what does it mean to be a Orthodox Christian or Roman Catholic? It means that you come to church at least twice a year, and Easter and especially Christmas, go to confession twice and receive communion at least twice, right? Same thing with your community. At least go twice a year, right? Show up for those July 4th functions and listen to what they have to say. When the fireman, goes around with the boot, throw some extra money in there. There's a lot of things you can do. Sometimes all you can do is give a little money, but at least you tried. You tell your neighbors, they can. If you can't do it, say, hey, what do you think about volunteering over there? I mean, and there's a lot of ways you can serve the community, but we all have to do it some way, right? Everybody's responsible. If everybody does a little bit, remember the whole thing, 5 minutes of your time, take 5. There was that campaign that was on, just 5 minutes of your time to donate 5 minutes of your time. Start doing that. That's basic. That's so you're running. We got to get back to the running game, man. We got to get that execution. We need another Vince Lombardi in there to show us how to diagram the play. Here's how you got to run it. And maybe some basics like growing up, something we did a lot. We went to church with grandma every Sunday. There's no saying no to that. We went to church. Yeah, I know people get really touchy on the subject, but faith is really important. I mean, you even if you're an atheist, you have faith in something. You have faith. People say, I believe in science. All right, let's talk about science. There was a time where scientists thought that we were the center of the universe, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody would have, went to their grave believing that. And Copernicus comes along and says, no, it's not right. They wanted to kill him. So science is not necessarily what we would call never changing or immutable. It's always changing. It's something that we learn new about properties. I still haven't found a scientist who can actually give me a good definition of gravity. Well, what is gravity? Gravity is a force. What do you mean a force? Well, it pulls. How does it pull? Explain it to me. Well, I can't. All right. Got any other way of explaining this gravity besides making people fall, or, kind of force we're talking here? You got this a black hole exists. Why? Because scientists tell us it exists, and we have faith in that. Can we see it? No, can't. So sooner or later, you're going to have faith in something. You have faith in the chair you're sitting in right now, Yih-Chau, that it's not going to fall apart and you're not going to end up on the floor. You don't even know who made the chair, do you?
No.
I put this one together myself. So I'm like, I don't know if this is going to hold. The table in front of me, I put this together yesterday. I'm not so sure about this. But by and large, we have faith that the other person's going to stay on their side of the line when driving on a highway without the Jersey wall, as we call it, without the guardrail.
Yeah.
So everybody, you got to have faith in something. And, there's nobody that exists without faith in something. You trust your parents. A little baby has faith that it's going to get fed. So I'm giving you, like, even animals have faith that, oh, okay, I'm going to go out and find food. And they're not thinking that they might go find nothing. That's not how animals live. So these are all things that we have plenty of time under these conditions to really think about. Maybe put the brakes on and just start to think more and reflect and go, all right, what are my priorities? What's really important to me? I see an issue that I'm told that I'm supposed to react and feel about because some news guy, by the way, these news people, I've know some of them, they're the worst human beings on the planet. You don't want them as friends. Okay. You can't count on them. They're not your foxhole buddies. I work with people in radio. They'll stab you in the back and smile while doing it. They're like the worst scumbags you'd ever want to meet. I'm so ashamed of myself for even getting into the industry sometimes. Like I should have made better decisions, but after 35 years, it's kind of like I'm at the point where a guy my age is not going to be able to start a new career, even if I wanted to be a police officer. Yeah, right. No, they're not going to let me do it. Although I will say, hiring older guys as your police officer and sending the older guys to war is actually the smart move, because we just want to get it done. Just like, all right, I got some other stuff. Let me just get the stuff done. And we're not going to just go, yeah, to everything, right? We're going to go, wait a minute. That's a really bad idea. I'm sorry. Let's hold on the brakes. That's why generals are all in their 50s. Hold on the brakes. That's a bad idea, guys. All right. So just analogies and examples and having some fun, right? So, I don't know what it's going to take for people to stand down and just start to really think about this and stop fighting about politicians who couldn't care less about the constituents they represent. Because if they really cared about us, a lot of these problems would have been solved a long time ago. You see, they thrive on what they define as our problems that only they can solve. That's not how any of this is supposed to be. They're supposed to represent us. So they get a collection of, here's an example. They have a collection of money that they've taken in from all of us. It's called taxes, which I still don't think there should be an income tax, but that's for a different show. They take all of that money in, the sales tax, tariffs, this, that, and the other thing, right? And they are responsible for our money and how they spend it. And I'm telling you, they've spent it irresponsibly for too many years. We got almost I think it's going to be $30 trillion pretty soon. We're in 20. What's another? This idea, here's two, where does the money come from? By the way, does anybody know how money is made?
They literally.
Okay. Money is, well, the economic and financial definition is money is created by checkable balances. In other words, money that's saved in a reserve, checkable balances. That's how money is created. It used to be gold back, so that you can take that and get a certain exchange for your gold. Like, no, here's the paper money is worth this much gold. I don't even know if there's gold left at Fort Knox. I have no idea. I'm going to say something that's insulting. Did President Obama give them all the gold to Iran? No, I'm just kidding. Where is the gold? Like at what point do we have faith in the money? I guess everybody has faith in this money, right? Nobody's got faith in Bitcoin because it's going nowhere. And so far, the USD is the reserve currency. So a lot of countries have faith in our dollar. Don't ask me why, because we print it like it's Monopoly games, right? It's crazy. Sooner or later, it's all going to hit the fan. Then what? Where are we going to be? So, all right, national debt. What do we do with that? You know what I would do? I know what Donald Trump probably is thinking. I'm just going to clear it all that bankrupt, and we're just going to just start over with a clean slate. And if anybody's going to pay for anything, I would say, China, after this, you're responsible for the $30 trillion. You're going to take care of the debt. It's your deal. You're the ones that cause most of this for us right now. Maybe you didn't cause all of it, but I'll tell you this. You're really responsible for at least half. So take care of it. This is what business people do, right? So it can't go on forever like this. It just can't. This is impossible. Anybody that's just ignoring it is like in La La Land and refuses to accept the truth. This is bad policy. What we can't keep bailing out zombie companies. That's another thing. Look that up. What's a zombie company? I remember Obama saved the auto industry, right? Bad idea. Really bad idea. Should have never done that. Remember when they bailed out the banks in 2008? Another really bad idea. What happened to all of that money? Where did it all go? And as taxpayers, if you're going to take my money and it's supposed to benefit me, did you get any sort of interest on that? Did you get any payment for your portion of tax money that went to bail out the banks? Did they give you any deals on credit cards? Did they lower your interest rates? Did you get a return on your investment? So, well, the country still functions. Yeah, it's dysfunctional. So where's the return on the investment? I'm just asking an honest question. Like, I want to know what happened with all of that money. Quantitative analysis, quantitative easing. Now, here's something else people forget. That last recession, this bank crisis, started in 2007. This is before Barack Obama becomes president. And so it was during October. People just like want to give them all the credit or give them all the blame, but this is a group effort, people. It was October. Look it up. They all met at the White House. I remember this. It was Barack Obama, it was John McCain, and it was George W. Bush. And they hashed out this QE. And they started pumping out the funds before the election. And then right before President Barack Obama took office, he requested George Bush to release some more of the funds to stimulate the economy. Look it up. Look up, I've paid attention to the national debt for years. It was $8 trillion by the time Bush leaves the White House. It goes up to almost 20 trillion. Maybe they say 19, but I think it's more like 20 trillion by the time Barack Obama leaves. So he doubled it. And now we're going to see, I don't know how far it's going to go. Then there was $21 trillion that ends up missing that went to the Defense Department, right? Ever hear that story that they can't find? Really bad accounting people. So we can't even handle accounting procedures, general accepted accounting procedures, and we're still letting them manage our money. This is the definition of insanity. When you think that the results are going to be different, this is insane that we allow this to continue. Anybody that stands up to it, well, there's something wrong with them. They're how many times have you heard, oh, by him cutting the payroll tax, it's going to malaffect the Social Security funds? How many times have you heard, oh, well, when President Clinton, we had a surplus? Okay, first of all, the surplus took the Social Security funding and added it to what was the general operational budget, okay? Yeah, when you add those two together, it looks like a surplus. But you know what? Those are two separate funds. Social Security is supposed to be over there to the side, left alone, and then you have your operating budget. Simple, right? So everybody plays with the numbers, but it's just a BS game. That's all it is. So maybe what we need is to have a common sense economist on a future show to explain what happened in 2007, explain what happened in 2008, explain, what the national debt really looks like, explain how interest rates work, explain how, we're going to be doomed. Like how is money created? All of these different things. Why aren't kids being taught that? They're being indoctrinated on political ideals, but they're not taught basic finance and economics. It goes over everybody. Everybody thinks economics and finance is boring. It really is hard to learn. It's hard to master because it requires a lot of math and discipline, and you really have to pay attention. You really have to study. But really, having the basic concepts is actually enlightening. That's called a liberal education. It brings you freedom. It gives you the ability to assess the stuff. Now, look, some of what I said might be a little bit off, might be a little wrong, and maybe an economist would take exception. But at least I'm trying to examine what's going on, and some of it is from memory, but I'm pretty sure if you look it up, you'll see that meeting took place in October 2007 before Barack Obama is elected as president. They all decided on this policy, so they all had a hand in it. And I think that Republican, Democrat, this is just a game. They all get along, I think, behind the scenes. They really probably do. Then how do you explain on like Donald Trump giving money to the Clintons a long time ago? All of a sudden, they're at each other's throat. I don't know how much is WWE entertainment and how much is truth anymore. It's really hard to distinguish the two. It's like it's a distortion of the reality. No matter what you look at, I can't. My daughter has no faith or trust in the media, no faith or trust in any of the politicians. What does that tell you?
Mm-hmm.
The child is wiser.
Indeed. Well, it's been a very, very entertaining almost 2.5 hours. So, I think we'll probably have to save the rest of, our conversation for next week. But,
I mean, unless there's, something that you really wanted to talk about that has to get out right now. Now's the time. I'll give the floor to you. The gentleman from New Jersey yields his time to the gentleman from California.
No, I think we covered most of the stuff. Anything we missed, we can definitely cover again next week. But just to our listeners, once again, just a real friendly reminder: if you could click subscribe if you liked our podcast, click like, share this video if you like to maybe get the message across. Click that notification bell here, to get our latest podcast episodes on a weekly basis. So, anyways, I had a great time as always, Zach, and thank you.
Yeah. So much. I was really talkative today. I must have had too much Diet Dr. Pepper. I'm sorry about you guys in Texas not having enough, but my offer still remains in effect. If you'd like to pay exorbitant fees for a case of Dr. Pepper, just email me. You can go to the website, newhdUSA.com. Remember, the suicide prevention hotline is 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255. Reach out to people, talk to people, have that discussion at home, make sure the number is available. Also, subscribe to the What's the Truth podcast. It's really cool. It's got Yih-Chau's picture on it. We went with him because he's better looking, and it's really just the coolest thing. If you don't believe me, you'll have to look it up for yourself. For Yih-Chau Chang, I'm Zach Martin. Take care of yourself until next time.